What's up, guys? I'm LQ. This is the LQ Review. Thank you so much for joining me here at my YouTube channel. This is where we talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. Movies, video games, comic books, and TV shows. And right now, I'm going to give you guys my review and my thoughts on the new Disney Plus original movie, Flora and Ulysses. Sorry, I almost forgot the title of it. But that's not an indicator of how good or how bad it is. I just almost forgot the title, that's all. Honestly, Flora and Ulysses was actually a pretty good movie. It's not one that I'm going to revisit a lot because it is kind of geared more towards kids than it is towards adults, or even more towards families. You know, it's kind of firmly planted there in kid content. And I don't know, I watched it without my kids, so maybe that affected my enjoyment of it a little bit, but it was decent. It was fine. It was good. It was good. Honestly, this was good. So let's talk about it, all right? So it's about a super squirrel that essentially brings a broken family back together. That's really what this movie is about, all right? So the squirrel is super. It's not like something that's in her head or in anybody else's head. The squirrel does have some superpowers, even though it doesn't use the superpowers a whole lot in the movie. It really only uses superpowers at kind of chosen times in the movie where it needed to exhibit those powers. The reality is that superpowers are not on display much here. But the squirrel does have superpowers, and the antagonist, there's not like some bank robber or somebody trying to swindle the family out of their money or out of their house or something like that. Like you get in a lot of kids' movies like this. This is really about a super squirrel who got its superpowers by being sucked into a vacuum. This is about a super squirrel who is trying to bring a family back together. This is Pete's Dragon in a lot of ways. This is Pete's Dragon. All right, the original one, not really the new one. Hear me out. Pete's Dragon. You had Pete, and he was not happy. You know, he was being abused, and he needed a family, and he was, you know, alone and sad. And then Pete's dragon, Elliot, comes in to help him. To give him a friend and help him get his life where it needs to be. All right, and then at the end, Elliot flies away. All right, this is Pete's Dragon. This is Pete's Dragon, guys. Sorry, there's a glare on my glasses. This is Pete's Dragon. The squirrel comes in when the kid needs it, helps the kid out, gets the kid's life to where the kid's life needs to be, and then the squirrel, I won't say it goes away, but it's mission accomplished. All right, and in those ways, this was definitely like Pete's Dragon. All right. This movie definitely leans heavily into the comic book references. In fact, probably the first minute or so is basically a Marvel commercial. I'm not kidding. It's basically a Marvel commercial. Now, we know Flora and Ulysses is owned by Disney, and Disney owns Marvel. Believe me, there's no doubting that after watching the first minute of it. But there's comic book references all over this. Even though it's not really your traditional comic book movie, the comic book references are everywhere. And that's not really a bad thing, you know. I was kind of afraid that there would be a lot of overkill in the comic book references, but they're really... I think that maybe if for some reason you just hate comic book movies, but you're still watching a super squirrel movie, then it might be considered overkill, but it's really not. I mean, it's kind of charming in its own way. Speaking of charming, the girl who plays Flora, Matilda Lawler, she's popped up in some other stuff. She was great in this. You know, she's a kid who's being asked to tackle some kind of grown-up issues, right? Broken families, and she handled it well. She handled it well. You know, a lot of her acting is going to be done with, I don't know if they used puppet or a ball at the end of a stick or whatever it might have been, or a stuffed animal. I don't know what they used as a stand-in for Ulysses when she was acting, but she did a good job also. I mean, she sold the idea that there was this living squirrel that she's interacting with. You know, she's somebody that I kind of expect to have a career beat when she grows out of her childhood phase and she's no longer a child actor. I actually expect her to continue to have a career because she definitely has some talent. Allison Hannigan showed up in this as Flora's mom, and you know, I kind of almost forgot that she was an actress. I love the American Pie movies. I know a lot of you probably love Buffy. I wasn't a huge Buffy fan, but you know, she had this great run where she was in everything. Allison Hannigan was in everything, and then I haven't seen her in a whole lot lately. So I was definitely happy to see her pop up here. I was like, look at that, it's Allison Hannigan. It's Michelle. It's Michelle from American Pie. Last time I saw her was American Reunion. So yeah, it was nice seeing her pop up, and now she's playing a mom. You know, I am old enough now. I'm old enough now that people who were playing kids in movies when I was a kid, they're now playing parents to kids who are watching movies now about kids. Oh gosh. So yeah, Allison Hannigan, it was nice to see her in this. Ben Schwartz popped up in this as Flora's dad. Ben Schwartz, you know, I've always said he was kind of the annoying character in Parks and Rec, but for whatever reason I still kind of liked him. He recently voiced Sonic as well. He was fine in this. You know, I want to ask him to do a whole lot of heavy lifting acting-wise, but he kind of sold it in this. He kind of sold the idea of, you know, being that... I don't want to get too spoilery here, but he kind of sold the idea of being that down on his luck. Whether he was a failure or not, his perception was that he was a failure. You know, you can also make the argument that he was never a failure because he never quit. But his perception, the way he saw it, was that he was a failure, and that, in fact, his failures led to a failed marriage. So he definitely had some layers as far as how he viewed himself as a husband, as a provider, as a creator, as a comic book creator, as a father. He definitely a very layered performance by Ben Schwartz. And like I said, I normally wouldn't have asked him to play a complex character like this, but he really did bring the different levels that had to be brought for this character, and this character definitely had some comedic moments. And really, in a lot of ways, the heartbeat of this movie is the Ben Schwartz character, because he was the one who was deprived of hope. He was the one who was deprived of happiness, and in a lot of ways, he was very self-destructive in that aspect. And when Ulysses comes into their lives, he is given hope. I mean, they actually literally spell it out for you. It gives him hope. Again, this is a kid's movie, all right? There's not much room for subtlety here. But, yeah, he was in a lot of ways the heartbeat of the movie. So Ben Schwartz gave a pretty good performance here. Given a very funny performance was Danny Pooty. He plays an animal control officer named Miller, and he had some very comedic, kind of slapsticky scenes. He goes to war with a cat. Not quite Bill Murray versus Gopher level, but it's like right there. So definitely very some very slapsticky moments with that character as well. And in a lot of ways, that character is kind of your antagonist, but not really. Not really. Really, the antagonist here is life. It's life. Alright, so I did say this was a pretty good movie, and it was a pretty good movie, but it wasn't a perfect movie. Alright, this movie really dragged some in the middle. There's a portion in the middle of the movie where, honestly, I got bored. Like, the shtick of the squirrel had kind of worn off. The squirrel was very well rendered as far as CGI was concerned. I mean, every bit as good, if not better than, like, Alvin and the Chipmunks. I mean, let's just say it was better than that. So, like I said, the squirrel is very well rendered, but the shtick kind of wears off, and like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of super squirrel antics here. So at some point, it just kind of started to drag, and it really didn't pick up for a while. So the middle of the movie really left some to be desired. Like I said, it started out strong and it's finished strong, and that's the most important part in the movie, is finishing strong, right? People remember the last moments of the movie. Usually when people walk out of a theater or they turn off that streaming service, that's what they talk about, is the ending. And to be fair, Flora and Ulysses stuck the ending pretty effectively. They really stuck the beginning, but they stuck the ending pretty effectively. So because of that, people are going to be pretty forgiving about the middle. Like I said, the CGI was rendered pretty well, except for the CGI on Ulysses was rendered well. There's some CGI on that cat battle scene where the cat fought the animal control officer. That looked a little cartoony. That looked a little suspect. There was a couple other scenes that involved some other CGI on some other things that looked a little cartoony, but Ulysses looked very convincing. Bottom line is, I like this movie. I enjoyed it. I wasn't really the target audience for it. Like I said, it's very much in the vein of being that kids movie. A movie that's made for kids. And yeah, families can sit down and enjoy this together. And if you're like me and you're just looking for something to watch on a Saturday afternoon and you're an adult, you can turn it on and you're not going to hate yourself watching it. You're not going to turn the streaming service off because you hate it. I got through the whole thing. And I didn't have a kid sitting there watching it with me. But it's one of those things where I'm not going to turn it on and watch it again unless I'm watching it with my kids, because I'm not the target audience for it. That being said, though, I give Flora and Ulysses a B-. It had a lot of good stuff happening in it, some really good performances, some nice CGI, some funny moments, but at the end, that middle section really dragged on quite a bit. It wasn't enough to ruin the movie for me, but it was enough for me to say, hey, this is not going to be a highly rated movie. So B-. B- is a fair grade for this. And none of the Disney Plus original movies, you talk about Godmothered, you talk about Noelle, you talk about, Stargirl, you talk about the ones that are made specifically for Disney Plus. None of them have been these big cinematic masterpieces. They've been smaller scale movies. And that's definitely what Flora and Ulysses was. So what did you think of Flora and Ulysses? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your take on it, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. While you're down there, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I put out a lot of content, and I want to make sure that you're up to date with everything that I'm doing. And as always, thank you so much for joining me right here at the OK Review, where we get to talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.